After 5 long years, this man finally gets an idea of who might have taken his daughter. Now, he must remember his hunting skills and get in a cat and mouse chase with the suspect. 2 hunters are about to shoot some prey when another man stops them. He asks them to drop their rifles, saying that they are in a conservancy. The man confiscates the rifles, saying the men should pick them up at the police station later. While leaving, the man realizes that his engine is dead and asks the men to help him start it. The men show him the finger and drive off, forcing the man to trek to his cabin by the lake. The man, Rayburn Swanson, is an alcoholic who owns the Gwen Swanson Conservancy. He has surveillance cameras all over the property so he can easily detect when people try to illegally hunt in the area. He lives with his dog Thor, whom he has trained to look at the surveillance cameras and bark if he spots anything unusual. Elsewhere, the new Sheriff Alice meets up with the local Indian police, Sheriff Carl, and takes her brother Brooks. Brooks is wounded, and he is always in trouble, and Carl warns Alice that she cannot keep rescuing him. When their parents died, Alice left Brooke under the care of foster parents. Years later, it was revealed that the foster parents had locked Brooks in the barn, abusing him for their pleasure. This made Alice feel so guilty that she vowed to protect her brother no matter what. Alice takes Brooks to a motel and warns him to stay away from the factory. This is an abandoned factory where homeless people, criminals, and drug dealers hang out. Alice learns of a body found near a lake and rushes to the scene. She sees that the deceased is a teenager and has an incision mark on her larynx. She looks around and spots an arrow in a nearby tree, making her suspect that the victim was hunted. News of the deceased quickly spread across the town, and Rayburn hears about it. He seeks out Alice, wanting to see the body. When he does, he is devastated, yet relieved when it isn't his daughter. Rayburn's daughter Gwen had gone missing 5 years earlier. Rayburn had left her in his truck at a petrol station and walked in to buy whiskey. He came back and found her missing, and 5 years later, he has no idea who took her. He became so depressed that he continued drinking, but he held on to the whiskey bottle he had bought the day of her disappearance. Since Gwen never liked Rayburn hunting, he stopped and started this conservancy in her honor. Alice offers to help Rayburn, but he pushes her off. Rayburn is drunk at home when his ex-wife approaches him. She wants him to sign a death notice so they can get a death certificate for Gwen. However, Rayburn tears up the notice and mocks his ex-wife for being pregnant. His ex-wife is angry, but she tells him that there will be a funeral in 2 weeks. Later, Rayburn sees someone wearing a ghillie suit in his conservancy. He quickly rushes to the spot, but the man shoots him with a spear, wounding his shoulder. Rayburn's truck is not working, so he has to trek quickly to his cabin. On the way, he spots the man's truck and marks it with an X on its rear. Rayburn rushes back home and treats his wound, then looks at the cameras to see what the man is hunting. He is horrified to see that the man has been chasing a girl. Rayburn packs some gear and rushes to the forest to rescue the girl. Meanwhile, Alice continues investigating and learns that the spearhead she found was used alongside a rare weapon called an atlatl. The spearhead had also been marked with the letters MB. Alice learns such weapons have been decommissioned, but a local man, Sam, makes them in the factory. Alice goes to seek out the man at the factory, but she doesn't find him. She has to leave since that area is not safe for her. Luckily, she gets an address from one of the girls. Alice goes to the given location but finds it empty. She sneaks into the house and starts looking around. Suddenly, the lights turn on. Alice hides and retrieves her weapon. She aims it at the person descending the stairs only to find Carl. Carl warns her against breaking and entering, saying that it is dangerous for her. He also tells her that Brooks is wanted in regard to the disappearance of a certain girl. Rayburn runs into the woods and tries to look for the girl. He manages to locate her passed out by the lake. He takes her to an underground trap and introduces himself, promising to take care of her. He shows her Gwen's picture, but the girl, Molly, doesn't recognize her. After staying in the bunker for a while, the two continue the trek to Rayburn's house. However, once they get into the house, they are ambushed by the hunter. He and Rayburn get into a fist fight with each struggling to stay alive. However, the hunter easily overpowers the weak Will and shoots him. Molly appears and tries to fend off the hunter, but she suffers a spear to the abdomen. The hunter wants to finish Will off, but at that time, Alice pulls up. The hunter hides just as Alice enters the house. She finds it in chaos and soon spots the wounded Molly on the floor. She assumes that Rayburn is the culprit and calls out for him. Rayburn appears and tries to explain that he is innocent. Fortunately, the hunter stands behind Alice and Rayburn warns her. She quickly turns around and orders the hunter to put down his weapon and kneel. As the hunter does so, he cracks his knuckles, and Alice realizes that the hunter is his brother Brooks. She turns around and shoots Rayburn, and then asks Brooks to run. Alice follows Rayburn, but ends up stepping into a bear trap he had set up. Rayburn calls the paramedics for Molly, and then drives to where his ex-wife lives with Carl. The couple drives him to the factory, and they call the local doctor, Boone, to help tend to Rayburn's wounds. Here, Carl spots Brooks and calls for backup. Brooks runs and holds Boone hostage, quickly subdued and arrested. Alice learns of this and wants to see Brooks, but Carl denies her request. Brooks then shows the police the barn where he'd been trapped Sam, explaining that he had kidnapped someone for hurting a woman. Sam is rescued, and it turns out he's the one who makes the illegal weapons. However, he doesn't make marked weapons, so he cannot help Alice. Alice is also notified that several witnesses placed Brooks at the factory that night, meaning he wasn't anywhere near the house, so he couldn't have been the hunter. A while later, Rayburn returns home and cleans up. He intends to throw away all his liquor and stay clean for his daughter. He goes to the bar to pay his debt, but then sees a truck driving by and remembers the X mark he had left on a similar truck. He starts looking around and soon finds the truck with the X mark. However, an old man gets out of the truck, making Rayburn suspect that the man's son is the hunter. The old man says that he is all alone, but his neighbor uses his truck. Rayburn treks to the neighbor's house and breaks in. He realizes that the man is an enthusiastic hunter, having a vast collection of animals he had hunted. Rayburn continues investigating and soon stumbles into the man's basement. He finds a girl on the operating table with her larynx being operated on. Suddenly, the hunter shows up and sedates him. Elsewhere, Alice is placed on leave while the accident at Rayburn's is being investigated. Being faced with a moral dilemma, Alice visits Molly and promises to find her killer. She then asks to see the autopsy report after noticing that Molly has a similar incision in her larynx to that on the dead girl. As she looks around, she sees a picture of Boone and a woman picture. She learns that Boone is with her daughter Melissa, who had died after being hit by a drunk driver. Putting two and two together, Alice realizes that Boone is the culprit, since the letters MB refer to his daughter. She calls in backup, and the police raid the doctor's house. They find the girl on the operating table, but Boone is nowhere to be seen. There are several missing posters on the walls, including that of Gwen. Alice drives up to Rayburn's house to tell him what had happened. However, he isn't there, and Thor is barking incessantly. Alice walks to Thor and sees the surveillance cameras. She soon spots Rayburn being chased by the hunter. She quickly runs to the woods to help him. However, Rayburn is determined to avenge his daughter's death. He rushes to one of his traps and retrieves a flare gun. He uses this to blind the hunter and attack him, getting the upper hand. He then asks him why he took Gwen. The doctor explains that after his daughter's death, he started kidnapping girls so he could rescue them from their evil parents. He cut out their larynx so they wouldn't scream for help. The doctor says that he had taken Gwen because Rayburn was an alcoholic and thus unfit as a parent. He was protecting her from ending up like her, and he knew she wouldn't be missed. Alice arrives and asks Rayburn to let her arrest the doctor. However, Rayburn pushes the doctor into the trap. Boone asks if Rayburn will leave him to die like an animal, but Rayburn says that he never lets animals suffer. He closes the door and tells Alice they are even, since he never revealed that she had shot him. Later, Rayburn attends his daughter's funeral and feels at peace, especially when Molly attends. He pours out the whiskey in the lake, having found peace in knowing that her killer had suffered a similar fate.